Brooks, starring Eve Arden. Well, in the time she's been teaching English at Madison High School, our Miss Brooks has been able to get along with almost all the members of the faculty. Her relationship with her principal, however, might best be described as catch as catch can.
That's about it. And Mr. Conklin catches me whenever he can. But our principal's eccentricities seem mild indeed compared to the recent project instigated by the head of the Board of Education. It seems the board had hired a psychologist to determine the mental and emotional fitness of the teachers in our district. However, last Thursday morning, I had something else on my mind. Mr. Boynton said he had a surprise for me and had invited me along on his customary early morning walk in the park. It was beautiful at that time, and as we strolled along with the sun barely visible above the treetops, I sensed an element of romance in the air. Suddenly he stopped, tenderly took my hand in his, and in a voice tense with emotion said,
Miss Brooks, look! A perfect specimen of the burrowing spade-foot toad.
Mr. Boynton, is that all you wanted to say to me?
Oh, no, indeed, Miss Brooks. When first unearthed, the spadefoot, or hermit toad, as he is sometimes known, looks like a small ball of brown earth. But then it expels the air from its lungs, and the deflated sides collapse like a punctured balloon.
Don't we all? Mr. Boynton,
This is truly a remarkable reptile.
But you said you had a surprise for me, Mr. Boynton.
I have, Miss Brooks. I've written a play.
What?
It's for the kids at Madison. They needed one for their dramatic festival next month, so I decided to write it.
What's the play about?
Well, when I decided to write it, I asked myself one question. What was the one thing nearest and dearest to my heart?
Yes, Mr. Boynton?
Well, there was only one answer. So I wrote a play about animals. I admit a play entirely concerned with animal life is rather offbeat, Miss Brooks.
Rather, but with the student body at Madison, you shouldn't have any trouble casting it. I just hope I'll still be around to see it.
What do you mean?
Well, these psychological tests the Board of Education is giving teachers have produced some rather drastic results.
Surely you're not worried because a couple of teachers at Jefferson High are being transferred.
And some of the Clay City faculty members have been removed, too. And if I'm not mistaken, Madison is next on the list.
Well, why worry about that now? I don't believe in crossing my bridges till I come to them.
While we're on the subject of bridges, have you ever thought of burning a few behind you? Mrs. Davis?
Oh, hello, Connie. How was your walk with Mr. Boynton, dear? What was his surprise? Was it what you expected? Did he propose? Did he set the day?
Not bad. Nothing much. No, and uh-huh. Well, that was one of the best volleys we've ever had.
Well, better luck next time. Did you ask him in for a bite?
Oh, if he wouldn't bite in the park, he'd never... You mean breakfast? No, I didn't know if you'd have enough.
Oh, I made enough breakfast for 4. Walter Denton's in the dinette already.
Well, luckily, I'm not very hungry. What's Walter doing here so early?
He said he wanted to talk to you. Go on in, Connie. I'll be along in a few minutes.
All right.
Greetings. Me friend of Tarzan.
That's only me, Miss Brooks. Walter.
I was just trying on this ape's head mask for my part in Mr. Boynton's play. Did I really frighten you much?
Oh, that's all right. Who needs 5 years' growth? Are the other members of the cast wearing animal heads, too?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, you'd swear Harriet Conklin was a living tigress and Stretch Snodgrass is a donkey.
I know. What's he playing in the show? Oh, that's his part. Well, you'd better take that ape's head off before Mrs. Davis comes in. She's liable to pass out from the shock.
It's on pretty tight, Miss Brooks, but I'll try to... Ooh, too late.
Here's your breakfast, Connie. I kept your eggs nice and warm.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis.
And how was your breakfast, Walter, dear?
Fine, thanks.
Well, don't you notice anything different about Walter today, Mrs. Davis?
Come to think of it, I do. For a boy his age, he's got a pretty heavy beard.
Is that all you can see?
Well, you do seem rather sunburned.
Yeah, I've got an ape's head on me, Mrs. Davis.
Well, don't worry. Your marks will improve. Oh, he's wearing an ape's head mask, Mrs. Davis. It's for a play Mr. Boynton's written for the school.
Well, isn't that interesting? But I'm afraid we're all out of bananas, dear. I'll go get you another glass of milk, though.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis.
What did you want to speak to me about, Walter?
Well, the reason I called for you early was to get you to school in plenty of time to ask Mr. Conklin for a free period between 2 and 3. That's the only time the entire cast can get together.
I see. Well, that should help prepare me for my new job.
What do you mean?
I'll be getting some practical experience with a real live lion.
So, Mr. Conklin, we'll adopt the same procedure at Madison that I have used at other schools. That is, I shall test each teacher individually to judge his emotional and mental adequacy for his job.
Very well, Mr. Gidney, but frankly, I'm not at all certain that I see the value in these tests.
Mr. Stone, the head of the Board of Education, personally engaged me for this project, Mr. Conklin.
These tests are invaluable. However, I've been a bit concerned by rumors that you recommended several teachers at Clay City for transfer.
They're more than rumors, Mr. Conklin. I am simply trying to fit the square pegs into the square holes and the round pegs into the round holes. In other words, get rid of the dead wood.
I see. But in getting rid of these wooden pegs, square holes, dead square.
Dead wood.
Yes. Don't you think mistakes can be made?
Mr. Conklin, I made a life study of testing emotional and mental capabilities adequately and fairly.
Oh, I have no doubt of that, Mr. Gidney.
I don't like to brag, but I can often tell almost at one glance what a person is and what he does.
Really? I'd like to see you try that sometime, Mr. Gidney.
Well, I'll do it for you right now, Mr. Conklin. We'll use whoever that is at your door.
Oh, splendid, splendid. Come in.
Good morning, Mr. Conklin.
Good morning, good morning. This is Mr. Gidney, but I'm not going to tell him who you are. He wants to try a little experiment.
Experiment?
Mr. Gidney contends that he can tell who you are and what you do just by looking at you.
Well, now, isn't that nice? Go right ahead, sir.
You see, I would say that this woman is a happily married housewife.
Why, you dear man.
She is also the mother of a couple of young children.
An amazing revelation.
Well, how am I doing so far?
So far, you owe me a husband and 2 children.
You mean that I'm wrong?
I'm an English teacher.
An English teacher? Well, that certainly is surprising.
It's a constant source of surprise to me.
I've never been this far off in my calculations. No doubt it's due to the fact that I've been working too hard lately. Well, once I give the tests in this district, I can take a little vacation.
The test? What test?
Mr. Gidney is the psychologist, Mr. Stone engaged.
The psychologist, Mr. Stone engaged?
Mr. Conklin and I are simply trying to fit the round pegs in the round holes, get rid of the dead wood, so to speak.
Yes, and what better person with whom to start the tests than Miss Brooks here?
Oh, now, let's not rush this thing. That is, I've got to rush along now, sir.
What's your hurry, Miss Brooks? You haven't even told me why you came in here yet.
I know, but right now I have something much more important to do.
More important?
Yes, sir. I have some information to bring to several round, square, and oblong pegs.
Do you remember a tune called One Concert?
Well, with the Board of Education in the mood to accept at face value the reports furnished by this psychologist, Mr. Gidney, I was more than a little concerned. By the time I joined Mr. Boynton for lunch in the school cafeteria, a number of the teachers had been tested, and from Mr. Boynton's behavior, I had a feeling he had been among them. I know you're upset about something, Mr. Boynton. Why don't you tell me about it?
Upset? Who's upset? What makes you think I'm upset?
You paid for my salad. Tell me what happened. Did you take the test?
Well, yes.
What were the results?
Mr. Gidney thinks I'm in the wrong profession.
The wrong profession?
He says I should be doing something that brings me into closer contact with the public. He suggested some branch of show business.
Oh, that's just dandy. Maybe you could do a vaudeville act with your frog. Boynton and McDougal. Songs, dances, and funny croaks. Boynton, this is fantastic.
It's pretty unbelievable to me, too, but he says on the basis of his test, he's going to suggest a transfer for me.
Well, he can't get away with it. The man simply doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, maybe not, but he's done it to several teachers at other schools. Gosh, it isn't going to be easy to leave Madison after all these years.
There must be something we can do.
Well, I don't know what, Miss Brooks. His power is very extensive.
But he seems more unstable than any of the people he's testing.
Hello, Miss Brooks. Hi, Mr. Boynton.
Oh, hello, Walter.
What's the latest?
Well, after taking her psychological test, Mrs. Barr has been recommended for transfer, and she's one of the best music teachers we've ever had.
What did Mr. Gidney recommend for her?
That she try her hand at welding.
Welding? Mr. Gidney is definitely operating with a minimum of marbles.
I'm another of the teachers he recommended for transfer, Walter.
You, Mr. Boynton? Oh, but he can't do this. He's taking the cream of an otherwise dubious crop. Present company accepted, of course, Miss Brooks.
Hello, everyone. Well, how do you like this tiger's head on me?
Oh, it's extremely lifelike, Harriet.
Yes, for a minute I thought you were Miss Enright.
Now, you might as well forget about that tiger's head, Harriet. In fact, it looks like we'll have to forget about the whole play.
But why?
Oh, I've taken Mr. Gidney's tests, and I've been recommended for transfer.
What? Why, that's an outrage. We couldn't get along without you, Mr. Boynton.
You're not just chomping your whiskers, Tabby.
Why, there's no telling where this can end. Golly, Miss Brooks, Daddy said you're to be in his office at 3 for your test.
Well, I'm not packing my bags yet. I just got an idea that may cancel all the effects of this psychological brainstorm right now.
What kind of an idea?
Well, first tell me, how many of those animal masks have you on hand, Mr. Boynton?
Well, we've got a pigs, wolves, apes, tigress, and lion's head.
Well, all we're going to need is the pig, wolf, and tigress.
But, Miss Brooks, I don't get it.
I'll explain. By his own admission, Mr. Gidney's been working very hard lately, and he's been under a great strain. Now, if I were taking the test and 3 people in succession were to walk into Mr. Conklin's office looking like a pig, a wolf, and a tigress, and I didn't acknowledge anything unusual about their appearance...
A great light is beginning to dawn.
Oh, I get it. You want Mr. Gidney to think he's got bats in his belfry.
Crazy mixed-up bats. If you can convince Mr. Conklin that Mr. Gidney's having upper story troubles, none of his reports will hold water.
Miss Brooks, suppose Mr. Conklin discovers us and we're thrown out of school.
Walter, if that happens, I know there's an opening for all 3 of you in the San Diego Zoo. Psychological tester already under a great strain, I had every intention of straining him right out of Madison High School. My plan was to convince Mr. Conklin that Mr. Gidney should be taking tests instead of giving them. At 3 that afternoon, the time set for my test, I was seated in our principal's office, intent on separating a few more marbles from Mr. Gidney's already depleted stock.
Now then, we'll begin by filling out this form. Your name, of course, is Constance Brooks. Now, your age?
25 and some months.
How many months?
About 50.
Well, all right. Parents' names, please.
Mommy and Daddy.
I mean, what did they call each other?
Oh, Snooky.
Maybe that isn't important. Were you the only child?
The only child who what?
The only child in your parents' home?
Well, yes, until I was 15.
And then there was another child?
No, I grew up.
past few months have been extremely trying for me. Please try to cooperate.
Oh, of course, Mr. Gidney.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm going to start you with a psychological test, which is an excellent indication to me of one's emotional stability. No doubt you've heard of word associations.
Yes, sir, but I'm not much of a joiner. Although if the dues aren't too high, I don't mind joining.
Please. I'm referring to a psychopathological test, or to try to put it simply, a compulsive reaction indicator.
You didn't try hard enough. Well, never mind. I'm ready if you are.
Fine. Now, I will give you a word, then you will tell me the word you associate with it. Ready? Black.
All right, black.
Black? I thought you'd mention another color.
We just met. Why should I start an argument?
This isn't an argument at all. It's a test. It's a simple test. If I said boy, you'd say girl. Now, do you understand?
Oh, I think so.
All right. Chair.
Thanks, I've got one.
Chair is the word. You're supposed to say another word.
I'm sorry.
I'll try again, daughter.
Okay, try it again.
I am trying it again. Listen, daughter.
I am listening, Pop. Oh, I see. You mean daughter is the word.
What word does it suggest to you?
Son.
At last. Now you've grasped the fundamentals.
Oh, have I? Well.
Now, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Bad. That isn't the word.
I'll give it to you now. Table.
William Burns.
William Burns? Well, what is his connection with table?
At the last party we were on, he wound up under one.
Maybe these past few weeks have been too much for me. However, I'll try one more approach. This is a psycho quiz used by many of my contemporaries. Now, Miss Brooks, if you had your choice, which of all of the animals in the world would you rather be?
Animals? Let's see. Oh, that's easy. I'd rather be a turtle.
Turtle? Why?
Because I like to dance.
You want to be a turtle because you like to dance.
Well, I don't want you to think I'm eccentric, Mr. Gidney, so I'd like to make a qualifying statement with that answer.
What is it?
I like to dance underwater.
So much for the psycho quiz.
Oh, come in. Oh, hello, Walter. What is it? Is something the matter, Mr. Gidney?
Something. Well, why? Oh, I see now. He's wearing a pig's head.
That's no way to talk about the editor of our school paper. Walter Denton, meet Mr. Gidney.
Glad to know you, sir.
Miss Brooks, do you mean to tell me that you don't see a pig's head on this boy?
Only when he eats. Are you sure you're feeling all right, Mr. Gidney?
I thought so up to now. You're positive that you don't see a pig's head on this fellow?
Are you positive you do see one?
Well, it could be a transitory illusion, I suppose.
Oh, I certainly hope so, but if it is... Come in.
Hello, Miss Brooks.
Well, Mr. Boynton, how nice to see
Now,
you.
these interruptions have got...
What's the trouble now, Mr. Gidney? Surely you remember Mr. Boynton.
Mr. Boynton, but he looks like a wolf.
Boy, have you got the wrong number. He looks perfectly normal to me.
You mean that is not a wolf's head he's got on?
Mr. Gidney, have you been nipping at our elderberry bush? Walter, do you see a wolf's head on Mr. Boynton?
That's ridiculous. How nutty can you get?
Well, I don't know, but Mr. Gidney is nudging a fruitcake. I'm afraid the strain you've been under is affecting your nervous system, sir.
But I've never had any symptoms like this before.
Crawl in. Come in. Hi, folks. Well, it's Harriet Conklin.
Harriet...
Yes, that's right. Harriet E. Conklin. Is something the matter again, Mr. Gidney? You're white as a sheet. What do you see this time?
This time, you go first.
Well, Harry, it looks perfectly fine to me. I know. Why don't you ask her what animal she'd like to be?
From my point of view, that's fairly apparent. She already has the head of a tigress, hasn't she?
A tigress? That's a hot one.
It's no laughing matter. I must be cracking up. I shouldn't have taken on this assignment. What I need is a good long rest.
But what about your reports to the Board of Education?
In my condition, I'd better notify the board to overlook them, or why it would be...
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mr. Conklin.
What's going on here? Why do all you people look like animals?
Then you see them too, Mr. Conklin.
Well, certainly I see them.
Thank goodness. At least that proves one thing.
Of course, you're both nervous wrecks. We never really thought you were crazy, Mr. Gidney.
Crazy? What is all this nonsense about?
It's quite simple, Mr. Conklin. These precious associates of yours almost succeeded in making me believe that I was out of my mind.
What?
They wanted me to think that I was incapable of giving these tests, but now that I realize that I'm not having a nervous breakdown, I'll send in my reports immediately. And you will be the first one transferred, Mr. Conklin.
I'll be transferred? But why? What were the results of my test?
You'll make an excellent brush salesman.
Put me down for 3 whisk brooms.
Why, this is preposterous. This is... Answer the phone, Miss Brooks.
The phone, sir?
The phone?
Yes, don't you hear it ringing?
I don't hear a thing.
Well, then I'll answer it myself. Hello? Who? What number do you want? No, I'm sorry. You must have the wrong number.
You heard the phone?
Oh, he hears it constantly.
He also hears doorbells. Oh, there goes that phone again. Well, this time I'm just going to let it ring.
What? Oh, no wonder they look like animals to him, too. We are in the same boat. I'm getting out of here. I need at least a year's vacation.
But, Mr. Gidney, what about your report?
Tear those up, Miss Brooks. They're not worth the paper they're written on.
Well, that's sad. Thanks to your quick thinking, Mr. Conklin, you've saved all our jobs.
Never mind the soft soap, Miss Brooks. For your part in perpetrating this thoroughly nefarious scheme without first consulting me, you shall be punished and punished most.
Oh, pardon me, sir. I think I hear the doorbell. I'd better hurry and answer it.
Doorbell,
Answer it.
Doorbell,
Answer it.
Doorbell,
Oh, it's over at my house. Right? Oh, it's...
Now, here's the star of our show, Eve Arden.
Sometimes I think I'd rather be a spade-foot toad and sink right out of sight, leaving such headaches as Mr. Gidney far behind.
Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden, transcribed. It's produced and directed by Larry Burns, written by Arthur Olsberg and Al Lewis, with the music of Lud Gluskin. Mr. Conklin was played by Gail Gordon. Others in tonight's cast were Jane Morgan, Dick Crenna, Bob Rockwell, Gloria McMillan, and Bob Sweeney. Now it's Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. When a woman like our Miss Brooks, who teaches English at Madison High School, goes with a man like Philip Boynton for 6 years, certain changes are bound to occur. Changes which Miss Brooks can't help but notice.
Yes, after 6 years, Mr. Boynton is wearing a different suit. But last week, for the first time, some radical changes did appear to be in evidence. All else having failed, I had decided to take my landlady's advice and try to build up Mr. Boynton's ego. So about 2 weeks ago, I convinced Mr. Boynton that he'd look much more distinguished if he'd grow a mustache. Last Thursday at breakfast, I discussed the early results with Mrs. Davis.
I knew that altering his appearance would make a difference in Mr. Boynton. What's the first change you've noticed, Connie?
It's much quieter when he drinks his soup.
Oh, there's much more to it than that. I saw his mustache when he called for your Sunday night, and it certainly tickled me.
Well, I wish it would tickle me. It is rather cute, though, isn't it? Actually, Sunday night was the last time I saw him, so it's too early to tell about any changes yet. Although I've been doing everything in my power to build up his ego.
Just what have you done, dear?
Well, I asked 3 of Madison's most attractive teachers, Miss Adams, Miss Higgins, and Miss Preston, to compliment him on his new look.
Well, that should have produced results.
It did. He went out with Miss Adams Monday night, Miss Higgins Tuesday, and Miss Preston Wednesday.
Well, with his new appearance, you've got to expect personality changes in Mr. Boynton. I'm sure he'll be much more positive toward you from now on.
Oh, he's positive, all right. He positively hasn't asked me to go with him to the party Mr. Conklin's giving tonight.
Party?
It's in honor of Mr. Stone's re-election as head of the Board of Education. The entire faculty's been invited.
Should be quite a gala affair.
Yes, the milk will flow like buttermilk.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Boynton will ask you. What are you going to wear, Connie?
Well, I don't know yet, Mrs. Davis, but you can bet it won't be what I was wearing about this time last year.
Well, what were you wearing then?
Don't you remember, Madison's home economics class had just honored me with their annual secret project.
Oh, of course. That blue dress they'd made with those vents in the back.
They just made the dress. I made the vents when I bent over.
Whatever became of that dress, dear?
Well, for a while, Walter Denton used it as a seat cover for his car. But I'll never forget when I first got it. I had to wear it around school for a week so I wouldn't hurt anyone's feelings. I only hope they don't honor me again this year. The presentation is due any day now.
Really? How do you know?
Well, Harriet Conklin's been hinting about it for days. She's in charge of the project this term.
Well, I'm sure she wouldn't give it to you 2 years in a row.
Well, maybe not, but... Oh, that's Walter to drive me to school. Be out in a minute, Walter. Well, I guess I'd better be going, Mrs. Davis.
Very well, dear. Have a nice day.
Oh, when you make my bed today, just leave the covers turned down, will you?
The covers?
Yes, if I get that presentation again, I'm liable to come down with a severe case of German measles. Oh, for goodness sakes, Walter. If you're going to make a turn like that, at least give the person behind you a hand signal.
For you adored, teacher, I'll send out a flare. But I thought you'd noticed something besides my driving today.
What's that, Walter?
Well, aren't you aware of anything different this morning? Look carefully.
Oh, of course. The pedestrians have been removed from your fenders.
It concerns my personal appearance, Miss Brooks. You see anything over my upper lip?
Yes, you forgot to wipe the egg off your lip.
Please, that's a mustache, Miss Brooks. Harriet noticed it immediately. But, of course, I usually give her a much closer view. Yeah, I got the idea from Mr. Boynton. Gosh, the way that man's mustache has changed his personality.
Then you've noticed it.
No, who hasn't? It's amazing what a difference some hair over a man's upper lip will make. Why, in the last few days, he's even winked at some of the female teachers.
That's just a nervous twitch, Walter.
It's nothing. And that isn't all. A couple of times I caught him holding a hand mirror up to his face.
Maybe he was trying to find out if he's alive. Apparently, he is beginning to change, but you can't prove it by me. I've hardly seen him in the last 3 days.
You know, just wait till you do. You'll be able to tell right away. It's practically all Harriet talked about last night.
Harriet? She didn't happen to mention the home economics class secret project, did she? I mean, did she say who was going to be the lucky winner of this year's seat cover address?
Well, no, but she did say they were going to make the presentation today, so whoever it was could wear it to Mr. Conklin's party tonight.
Turn the car around, Walter. I feel an attack of the measles coming on.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it won't be you this year, Miss Brooks. They've never made the presentation to the same teacher 2 years in a row.
Well, you can never tell when they're liable to start a nasty precedent. But I guess it... Say, this isn't the way to school, Walter.
Yeah, I know. Miss Enright called before I left home and asked me if I'd pick her up on the way to school, too.
Miss Enright? Did she know I'd be along?
Oh, sure. Yeah, she said that would make the trip even more enjoyable.
Miss Enright said that?
Well, to quote her exactly, Miss Enright said she'd always look forward to being present when you were taken for a ride.
That's Enright, all right. Well, I suppose I can stand it for a few miles if she can.
Well, let's see now. She said her house was right in the middle of the block and she'd be out front.
Here it is. Just pull up in front of that stunted tree, Walter.
That's Miss Enright.
Oh, yes. You have wonderful vision, Walter.
Well, good morning, Walter. Good morning, Miss Brooks.
It was.
My, but you two make a pretty picture in the front seat.
We do?
Yes. I'd call it mother and son in jalopy.
Well, hop in and we'll have 3 generations, Grandma.
Well, I do hope I won't be crowding you, Miss Brooks. But then you're used to being shoved around, aren't you, darling?
Maybe I'd just better get out and walk.
Oh, no, nonsense. Just move over a little. Ah, there we are. Oh, this is comfy. Walter, your upholstery is positively squishy.
I haven't moved over yet.
Oh. Sorry.
Well, we better get going or we'll be late.
Well, Miss Brooks, looking forward to Mr. Conklin's little party tonight? I suppose you'll be wearing the dress the home economics class gave you last year. Or maybe they'll give you this year's sack in time.
They don't give it to the same teacher 2 years in a row. Maybe you'll get it.
Oh, don't be silly, darling. Muslin isn't becoming to me.
It would be if you had the collar and leash to go with it.
Now, ladies. Let's not have any ill feeling aboard.
Oh, I couldn't have any ill feeling toward Miss Brooks these days. Not after what she's done for Mr. Boynton.
What I've done for Mr. Boynton?
Oh, yes, since he grew that mustache, the changes in his personality are positively spectacular. Why, a few weeks ago, he'd have felt compelled to ask you to the affair tonight. Now he had absolutely no hesitancy in dating me.
What? You mean he invited you to the party? I don't believe it.
You can find out for yourself when we get to school, Miss Brooks.
That's exactly what I will do. And, Walter, will you wait in your car for me, please?
Why, Miss Brooks? Do you want me to run you somewhere?
If it's true, you can run me over. Oh, Mr. Boynton. Mr. Boynton, where are you?
Oh, right over here, Miss Brooks, in front of this mirror.
Oh, I wanted to talk to you before class began, and... What are you doing, Mr. Boynton?
I was just trying to make up my mind about this mustache, Miss Brooks. Do you think I should wax it or let it curl naturally?
I'd say it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
6 of one and half a dozen of the other?
Yes. Wax the 6 hairs on one side and curl the half dozen on the other. You know, this is the first time I've ever seen you in front of a mirror, Mr. Boynton.
I know. Why, I must have passed this mirror 10 times a day for the past 6 years.
Well?
Gosh, what I've been missing. That is, I think a man should pay attention to his appearance, don't you?
I'm beginning to wonder. The next thing you know, you'll be wearing a cane on the campus.
Oh, not me. I'm not that vain. I never wear my cane until I'm away from school.
What? You mean you've actually bought a cane?
Just a little walking stick. It does a lot for my poise.
I'll bet it does. But that isn't why I came in to see you, Mr. Boynton. As you know, Mr. Conklin's giving a buffet supper for Mr. Stone tonight, and since we've both been invited, I thought...
I wanted to talk to you about that, Miss Brooks.
Good. What time will you pick me up?
That isn't quite what I had in mind.
What time do you want me to pick you up?
Well, that isn't what I meant either. I don't know how to put this exactly, but with the growth of this mustache, something has come over me.
You're not just flapping your fuzz, Philip.
Well, I'm not kidding, Miss Brooks. My new appearance has done a lot for me. Why, in the last 3 or 4 days, almost every female teacher in the school has complimented me on my appearance. I must confess it's had its effect.
In what way, Mr. Boynton?
Well, for one thing, I find I'm no longer preoccupied with my frogs.
What? How can you ever face McDougal?
Oh, I don't want you to think I'm conceited, Miss Brooks, but when I noticed how women reacted to my mustache and me, well, a definite change began to take place in my personality.
A change?
Mm-hmm. Where I formerly thought of myself as exclusively a man's man, I now think of myself as a ladies' man, too.
I've got to get this boy a razor. Look, Mr. Boynton, what has this got to do with tonight?
Well, I'm taking Miss Enright to the party tonight.
Then it's true.
Yes, Miss Brooks. Now, I don't want you to be hurt. Actually, I owe you a great deal for helping me to discover my true self. But, well...
Yes, Mr. Boynton?
It's just that now I feel I belong to all women.
Thank you, Tommy Manville.
Here, behind this door.
Oh, for a minute I thought the radiator was leaking hot air.
It's me, Mr. Conklin.
I wasn't far wrong. What are you doing behind the door, Mr. Conklin?
Step into my office, Miss Brooks, and I'll tell you.
All right. Well, aren't you coming out?
I don't dare. I've just learned that I'm one of the recipients of this year's clothing award from the home economics class. I'm wearing the thing now.
Well, don't be bashful, sir. I'm sure you look ravishing in the new muslin dress.
It's not a dress, Miss Brooks. The class made me a suit of clothes. When Harriet first presented it to me, I thought it was a horse blanket. However, on closer inspection, I discovered it was a suit made from a horse blanket.
Oh, it can't be that bad, sir. Come on out and let me see it.
I don't know whether I should risk it. You promise you won't laugh?
Yes, sir, I promise.
All right. Here I am.
Well, I didn't laugh.
Now you can appreciate what I'm up against. This consists of nothing but odds and ends.
Well, if you don't mind my saying so, you look a little odd where it ends.
At certain times, your levity leaves me cold, Miss Brooks.
In certain places, so will that suit.
I haven't dared leave the office since I put it on. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm deeply honored that Harriet's class thought enough of me to give me this award.
Oh, of course.
It shows that the undergraduates involved hold me in the highest esteem.
Yes, indeed.
And there's truly nothing in the world I treasure more than this gift.
Nothing in the world.
But, Miss Brooks, since this was the class's secret project...
You wish they'd have kept it a secret.
The truth of the matter is, when Harriet and her classmates made the presentation this morning, they insisted that I not only wear this suit when Mr. Stone arrives this afternoon, but tonight at the party as well. They said they'd be deeply hurt if I didn't. Miss Brooks, I'll be the laughingstock of the school unless you help me out of this predicament.
But how can I help, sir?
Well, for years now, it's been an unwritten rule that the teacher who received the award the previous year has the final say as to who gets it the following year. Although this rule has seldom been invoked, this year we're going to invoke it, aren't we?
Are we?
For some time now, you've been arguing to get Mr. Boynton a new lab next to your classroom. Right, Miss Brooks?
We've just put that unwritten rule in writing.
I knew I could count on you, so I've taken the liberty of sending for my daughter. I know how persuasive you can be when you want to be, Miss Brooks. So you... here she is now.
Did you want to see me, Daddy? Oh, hi, Miss Brooks. What do you think of Daddy's new suit? Real gone, isn't it?
It's on its way.
Miss Brooks has something she wants to discuss with you, Harriet.
Oh? What is it, Miss Brooks?
Well, since I received the Home Economics Class Award last year, I have final say as to who gets it this year. Is that correct?
Well, yes, Miss Brooks, but for years now, every teacher has ridden along with the class's selection.
This is where I get off. That is, I'm taking advantage of my prerogative, and I don't think your father should receive the award this year.
I don't think he should either. I mean, Miss Brooks may have a point, Harriet.
But who deserves the suit more than Daddy, Miss Brooks?
Only one man, the esteemed head of our Board of Education.
Mr. Stone?
Mr. Stone!
Motion carried, Stone stuck. He should get the award.
Well, if you say so, Miss Brooks, but I certainly hope there's no objection to the other presentation we're making today.
The other one?
Yes. Besides the suit, our class made a dress for a female teacher. We're giving it to Miss Adams.
Want to bet?
You mean you don't approve of that selection either? Then who do you think should get it?
Only one person, Harriet. The teacher who's really been asking for it.
Miss Brooks.
Huh?
I'm over here behind the door of the faculty room.
Oh, for a minute I thought it was a cobra.
It's me, Miss Enright.
I wasn't far from wrong. What are you doing behind the door, Miss Enright?
You know perfectly well what I'm doing behind this door. Because of you, I've been compelled to wear the dress the home economics class made for Miss Adams. Now I daren't show my face in public.
Well, you can't blame that on the dress.
Now, never mind the tracks. The winner of this loathsome award has to wear this thing to the party tonight. Now, you got me into this dress, Miss Brooks. You get me out of it.
Oh, then you definitely won't be able to show your face in public.
You know what I mean. This atrocity looks like a potato sack on me. There, look, see?
It would look better with potatoes in it. But if you're so set against wearing it tonight, perhaps we can make a deal.
What sort of deal, Miss Brooks?
Well, since I have the final say, I could tell Harriet to give it to someone else, but only under certain conditions.
What are they?
First, that you break your date with Mr. Boynton tonight, and second, that you give as your reason the fact that he's been taking this mustache bit much too big.
And if I refuse?
Say, I was just noticing that muslin does wonders for your knobby knees.
All right, Miss Brooks, you win. I have no choice but to agree to your proposal.
Atta girl.
You must admit I'm a good loser, darling.
Yes, indeed, Miss Enright, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather see lose. At 3 that afternoon, my principal and I were in his office awaiting the prospective recipient of the 2 garments.
Well, Mr. Stone ought to be here any minute now. Do you want to make the presentation, or shall I, Miss Brooks?
Well, as the previous year's recipient, I think I should present the suit to him, Mr. Conklin. And if you don't mind, sir, I'll also give him this other award.
You mean this piece of burlap? The only thing that's good for is to hold a bunch of potatoes.
That's no way to talk about Mrs. Stone.
Mrs. Stone?
This is the dress made by our home economics class. The Stones should make quite a handsome couple in these outfits.
Oh, yes, indeed. They'll be almost as well dressed as Mammy and Pappy Yoakum. However, as long as you've made... Oh, there he is now. Come in. Well, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Osgood. Hello, Miss Brooks.
Hello, Pappy. Mr. Stone.
Before we get down to school business, Mr. Stone, Miss Brooks has a little presentation for you from our home economics class.
A presentation? Why, Miss Brooks, I'm touched.
Wait till you see it. You'll go out of your mind altogether. Mr. Stone, to show our deep appreciation for the work you've done in behalf of Madison High School throughout the year, the home economics class has made this gift especially for you. Here you are, sir.
Why, it's beautiful.
Do you really think so?
Yes, indeed. The next time I go riding, I'll put it under my saddle.
Oh, no, sir. It's a man's suit. The class expects you to wear it to Mr. Conklin's party tonight.
This is a man's suit?
You can tell by the buttons. See? There are very few double-breasted horse blankets.
Oh, yes, I see it now. It's lovely.
And besides this suit, sir, our home economics class wants you to have this additional gift.
Oh, thank you, Miss Brooks. That'll come in very handy. It should hold several pounds of potatoes.
It's a dress for Mrs. Stone.
I see. You're giving this suit to me and this dress to my wife.
We also supply a door to hide behind. That is, you'll get a lot of good wear out of them, I'm sure.
Yes. Well, Osgood, I don't know how to thank you for your part in this.
Oh, Miss Brooks deserves all the thanks. As recipient of last year's gift, she had the final say. It was her idea.
Your idea, Miss Brooks?
Has my transfer to Siberia come through yet?
If you're going to wear this suit to the party tonight, why not try it on now, sir? I have a tie in my inner office that will go perfectly with it. I'll dash right in and get it. Won't be a minute.
Miss Brooks, I don't want you to mistake what I'm going to say for a moment. I'm deeply honored that the home economics class thought enough of me to give me this award.
Of course.
It shows that the undergraduates involved hold me in the highest esteem.
Yes, indeed.
But if this was a secret project, why didn't they keep it a secret? Well, don't get me wrong, Miss Brooks. I just feel that this award should be given to someone more directly concerned with Madison's daily life. Mr. Conklin, for instance.
Mr. Conklin?
Yes, I feel that you should reconsider to whom this gift should go, just as I am about to reconsider the appointment of a new head of Madison's English department. Do you follow me, Miss Brooks?
Do you want to make the presentation, or shall I?
I think that since you...
Well, here it is, Mr. Stone. Isn't it a beauty? This tie goes with that suit like ham goes with eggs.
Pardon me, sir, but the knife and fork just changed hands.
What Miss Brooks means, Osgood, is that I cannot accept this signal honor.
You can't?
Mr. Conklin, Mr. Stone and I feel that because of your devoted attention to the needs of both teachers and faculty at Madison High throughout the years, this suit from the home economics class should go to you.
Well, there's nothing I've wanted more. Mr. Stone, Miss Brooks, I don't know how to thank you. As I look at this splendid garment, I realize that there's nothing I've wanted more! Miss Brooks, what's going on here?
Mr. Stone persuaded me you should have it, sir.
But I thought we decided Mr. Stone should have it. Remember? When we were discussing Mr. Boynton's new lab being moved right next to your classroom?
Now, tut, Osgood. The decision should come from the new head of Madison's English department.
Head of the English department? Miss Brooks? But we'd be trading our integrity for a mess of pottage.
A double-breasted mess of pottage. Look, gentlemen, I don't want to blackmail anyone into a promotion. Perhaps neither of you deserves this award.
That's my girl. But then who should be the recipient?
It does present a problem, doesn't it?
Come in.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Boynton, welcome home.
Oh, no, you can't do...
Huh?
Will you make the presentation, or shall I, Mr. Stone?
Go right ahead, Osgood.
Since I have the final say, I...
Get lost. Mr. Boynton, in honor of the service
you have done for Madison throughout the years,
because of your devotion to duty
and your unflagging zeal in your work,
we want you to have
this award.
From the picture Abbott and Costello Meet the Board of Education.
I don't quite understand, but thank you very much for the suit. I certainly didn't expect anything like this when I came in here.
Why did you come in, Mr. Boynton?
Harriet told me you were in here, Miss Brooks. And since Miss Enright can't make it, I wanted to invite you to Mr. Conklin's party tonight.
I accept. And that automatically eliminates you as the recipient of the honorable horse blanket. But, gentlemen, I think I have a solution that should be acceptable to all concerned.
What is it, Miss Brooks?
Hand it over, please. Thanks. For you, Mr. Stone. For you, Mr. Conklin. For you, Mr. Boynton. And may the pants rest in peace.
Starring Eve Arden, Clarence Clyde, is produced and directed by Larry Burns, written by Arthur Olsberg and Al Lewis, with the music of Lud Gluskin. Mr. Conklin was played by Gail Gordon. Now it's Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. Miss Brooks, who teaches English at Madison High School, has been going with Philip Boynton for quite some time now. 6 years, to be exact. But only once or twice during that period did she have to worry about the eternal triangle.
And that's not unusual when your boyfriend is the eternal square. Still, I must admit I did see green about 2 weeks ago when Mr. Boynton began dating a young society beauty named Lucy Fairchild. I got angry. We had an argument. And I finally asked Mr. Boynton to choose between us. Did he want a beautiful young society girl with $1 million or a steadily employed English teacher with a guaranteed pension in 20 years? Oddly enough, he chose me. And to make my happiness complete, our beloved principal, Mr. Conklin, invited the two of us to spend this past weekend with him and Mrs. Conklin at their cabin on Crystal Lake. Friday morning, my landlady was in my room with me, helping me pack, when she suddenly began to get sentimental.
Connie, do you realize this is the first time we've been separated in almost a year? Oh, I am going to miss you, dear. Promise me you'll write every day.
But, Mrs. Davis, I'm only going to be gone 2 days. Why, I'd be home before the first letter reached you.
Oh, how nice. Then we could both sit down and read it together.
Better still, why don't I write the letter now and let you read it to me while I'm packing? I know just what I'd say in it. I'd tell you what a wonderful time I'm having with Mr. Boynton.
I hope it comes true, dear. It's just too bad Osgood will be around to pester you two.
You're not kidding. Ever since Mr. Conklin saved Mr. Stone by pulling him out of that open elevator shaft, he's been playing the hero role to the hilt. But to spend a weekend with Mr. Boynton, I can even bear Mr. Conklin.
Connie, I know it's a touchy subject, but, well, has Mr. Boynton really given up that society girl?
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Boynton is through with the Crepe Suzette's crowd. I think he realizes now that we donut dunkers were made for each other.
Still, I wonder...
Wonder what, Mrs. Davis?
Well, it's probably just my imagination, but this whole thing reminds me of a book I read.
Oh?
You and Mr. Boynton going up to a lonely cabin in the woods. It's before the regular season opens, nobody around. He's torn between you and that society girl. He takes you out in a shaky rowboat. Connie, it's an American tragedy all over again.
An American tragedy? Oh, Mrs. Davis, you certainly have an imagination. What an utterly fantastic thought.
Oh, of course it is, dear. Of course it is. It's an utterly fantastic idea.
Look, Mrs. Davis, for your information, Mr. Boynton has never even read an American tragedy. Now, let's just forget the whole thing. Oh, that's Walter to drive me to school. Come in, Walter. The door's open. Mrs. Davis, please, not a word to Walter about what we've been discussing, or I'll never hear the end of it.
Connie, I give you my word, my lips are sealed. And you know when I give anyone my word, I could be drowning and I... Oh, pardon me, dear. Oh, good morning, Walter.
And a good morning to the two fairest ladies of my acquaintance. Hey, it looks like you're practically all set for the big weekend, Miss Brooks.
Yes, Walter. A mad, glorious weekend away from classrooms, books, and American-born students who refuse to learn the English language.
Yeah, but you'll still have old Marblehead. You'll have Mr. Conklin with you. Harriet says that living with him these days is like living with a combination of John Wayne and Fearless Fosdick. Did you see the poem he wrote called Keep Your Head? It covers the entire school bulletin board. 32 stanzas. Did you read it, Miss Brooks? It's all about courage.
I read it, Walter, and for the first time, I was glad I was a coward. But Mr. Conklin or no Mr. Conklin, I'm looking forward to a wonderful weekend.
Yo, I don't blame you. You and Mr. Boynton away together in a lonely cabin in the woods before the regular season opens. Nobody near, no society girl around. Just the two of you out in the lake alone in Mr. Conklin's shaky rowboat. Hey, it's an American tragedy all over again.
An American tragedy. Why, Walter, that's the most fantastic thing I ever heard of.
In the last 30 seconds. Actually, it's a perfectly ridiculous idea.
Oh, I wasn't for a minute implying that such a thought would ever enter Mr. Boynton's head.
Well, I'm glad of that. Now, just forget the whole thing.
Only, why has he been reading that book for the past 3 weeks?
He's been reading an American tragedy?
Oh, but, Connie, what difference does it make? There's probably no connection between the two.
Oh, of course not. No connection between the two. None at all. None whatsoever. Absolutely no connection. Now, the whole thing is absurd, Walter. The whole idea of going up to the cabin was Mr. Conklin's, not Mr. Boynton's idea, and I don't expect to go out on the lake up there anyway.
Oh, sure. Sure, there's no comparison between the two situations. I'm sorry if I made you nervous, Miss Brooks.
Nervous? Me nervous? Don't be silly, Walter.
Connie, I don't want to rush you, but don't you think you should be on your way to school?
Right, Mrs. Davis, I'm all ready. Come on, Walter. Let's get into your boat and row to school. Oh, good morning, Harriet.
Oh, hi, Miss Brooks.
Why so depressed this morning, dear?
I just left Daddy's office.
If you were just entering, you'd have an even better reason.
Oh, honestly, since Daddy rescued Mr. Stone a few weeks ago, there's simply no living with him. Mother says she's heard so many stanzas of his poem, Keep Your Head, she's losing hers. Gosh, I certainly don't envy you being up at Crystal Lake with Daddy over the weekend.
Well, with Mr. Boynton along to keep me company, I'm certain I'll manage.
Oh, of course, it should be great for the two of you. Away together in our lonely cabin in the woods before the regular season opens. Nobody around for miles. That society girl forgotten. Just the two of you out on the lake alone in Daddy's wobbly rowboat.
Harriet, I won't have you implying this is another American tragedy.
But, Miss Brooks, I wasn't implying.
You weren't?
Of course not. Why, there's certainly no reason to be suspicious of a man just because he suggested to Daddy that he open his cabin and invite you along.
Mr. Boynton asked your father to open his cabin and invite me along? It was Mr. Boynton's idea?
Well, yes, but that's certainly nothing to be upset about.
Upset? Who's upset? Why should I be upset? Besides, Mr. Boynton has never said anything about going out in any boat. He's never mentioned that. Never once. So why should I be upset?
Good morning, Miss Brooks. My. What did I do to deserve such a charming greeting? Now step into my office, please. I want to have a word with you.
Yes, sir. I'll see you later, Harriet.
Bye, Miss Brooks.
You needn't sit down, since this won't take a minute, Miss Brooks. I presume you've seen my poem on the bulletin board. I posted it yesterday, just before lunch. You couldn't miss it going to the cafeteria. Did you read it?
Yes, sir, and it saved me lunch money. I read it, sir.
The first two stanzas I consider the most important. Keep Your Head by Osgood Conklin. When others about you show panic and fear, just keep your head and never lose cheer. The world makes room for the heart that is brave, so just keep your head. Ride the crest of the wave. Miss Brooks, tell me truthfully, have you ever heard anything so inspirational?
Not since Casey at the bat.
Now, on my desk this morning was this piece of paper, and on it is a dastardly satire some ignorant buffoon made of those precious verses. Go on and read it, Miss Brooks.
When others about you show panic and fear, just keep your head like a good glass of beer. The world makes room for the heart that is brave, so just keep your head. You'll have something to shave.
Who could have done this to me, Miss Brooks? Who could have played this ghastly trick on Osgood Conklin? Who? Miss Brooks, are you listening to me?
Oh.
Did you hear what I said?
Oh, pardon me, Mr. Conklin. I really don't know who could have written it. Will you excuse me now, sir? I'm not myself today. I feel a little nervous.
Oh, well, then this weekend with us up at the lake will do you good. You'll have plenty of opportunity to be alone with Mr. Boynton. You've always wanted that, haven't you?
Yes, but not quite this way. That is, it should be nice, sir.
It certainly should be for both of you. But something he asked me yesterday has me a little puzzled.
Something he asked you?
Yes. He asked me, did I have a good, strong rowboat?
Good, strong rowboat. He asked you that? Well, when did he ask you that?
Right after he asked me how deep the middle of the lake was.
How deep the middle of the lake was?
Well, yes. Looks like Mr. Boynton plans to drown you. Why, what's the matter, Miss Brooks? Where's your sense of humor? I was only joking. I'm certain such a delightful, hideous thought never entered Boynton's head.
Oh, no, I'm certain it didn't, sir. Absolutely certain. Now, if you'll please excuse me.
But, Miss Brooks, where are you going?
Down to the pool to learn to swim.
Miss Brooks. Brooks, what is it?
Oh, nothing at all. Nothing at all, Mr. Boynton. Well, nice bumping into you. On dry land, that is. I'll see you next week sometime. Bye.
Next week? Miss Brooks, what are you talking about? You haven't forgotten our trip this weekend, have you?
Oh, no. I remember the weekend under Crystal Lake. On Crystal Lake. But frankly, I've been thinking of staying home this weekend.
But, Miss Brooks, you promised to go. I thought we'd patched up our little difference, and I really have been looking forward to it.
You really have been looking forward to it?
Yes, and I've made some plans. Little on the romantic side, if you know what I mean.
It doesn't matter. With me, both sides are romantic. Oh, gosh, how could I have been so silly? What are your plans, Mr. Boynton?
Well, tonight after dinner, just as the full moon comes out in a perfect blue sky, we'll go out in Mr. Conklin's rowboat. I'll need just one big, powerful oar. And I'll show you how to sit so you don't rock the boat. And even if you do fall into the lake, I can swim. Mrs. Brooks, why are you looking at me that way? What is it? Oh, I think I know what's bothering you. You're mystified as to my actual reason for this trip. Now, isn't that it?
No, I've read chapter 23.
My actual reason for going up to the lake is to gather first-hand information on the nocturnal habits of the speckled-throated frog.
The nocturnal habits of the speckled-throated frog?
I'm doing some highly confidential research work for a biological paper I'm writing. I wasn't even going to tell you until we got up there.
And that's the only other reason you wanted to go out with me in a rowboat tonight?
What did you think I wanted to go out with you for? To repeat an American tragedy?
It was a perfectly crazy idea. How could a thought like that even enter my mind?
Of course. Well, I've got a class now, Miss Brooks. I'll pick you up at your house at 4 o'clock sharp. I'll just honk my horn and you come out.
I should be all packed by then, but if I'm not right out, tread water wait for a few minutes, will you?
Osgood, ever since we arrived at the cabin 3 hours ago, you've been behaving ridiculously. Now come out of that rowboat this instant.
Shh, quiet, passion flower. Believe me, Boynton has gone completely berserk. Everything he's done so far clearly indicates he plans to marinate Miss Brooks tonight.
Osgood, please stop hiding under that tarpaulin. They're bound to see you sooner or later.
Believe me, Poopsie girl, your Osgood knows what he's doing. I've collected facts from Walter Dent and Harriet and Miss Brooks herself, and there's no question about it. Boynton plans to end his romantic obligations to Miss Brooks by bashing her over the skull and using her as bass bait. But I am going to save her.
Save. Osgood, since you pulled Mr. Stone out of that elevator shaft and became a hero, you've been simply impossible. Now, please get out of that boat before they come down here.
Worry not for your Osgood's safety, my pet. He knows how heroes are expected to act in emergencies, and he shall not be found wanting. The world makes room for the heart that is brave, so just keep your head.
And you'll have something to shave.
Then it was you. You wrote that satire. For 20 years, I've clasped a Delilah to my bosom.
I think they're coming now. Please get out of that boat. Oh, very well. Be a hero. And when Mr. Boynton finds you hiding under that tarpaulin, I hope he hangs something besides a medal under your eye.
Miss Brooks will return in a moment.
You know, being a good driver is more than just turning on the ignition and stepping on the gas. You have to know where you're going, look where you're going, and getting there depends on the brakes. Have you checked your brakes lately?
Well, there was no doubt in Mr. Conklin's mind. Mr. Boynton was going to end his romantic idyll with Miss Brooks by using her to fatten up the fishes. So, to prevent another American tragedy, when the two took his rowboat out on Crystal Lake, he hid himself under the tarpaulin.
Oh, gosh, isn't it nice and peaceful out here on the lake, Mr. Boynton?
Oh, it sure is, Miss Brooks. I wonder if you'd mind. That is, well, can I hold your hand?
I doubt it. We're about 8 feet apart.
You could sit closer. Why don't you sit on that tarpaulin?
Oh, no, thanks. I tried it before, and I felt like I was sitting on a mass of whale blubber. What was that?
Oh, probably the mating call of the speckled-throated bullfrog. Would you like me to tell you about the love life of the frog, Miss Brooks?
Right now, I'm trying to develop one of my own. I mean, some other time, Mr. Boynton.
Well, maybe I could move a little closer to you.
No, stay where you are. I'll come to you.
Very well. Only be careful. This boat's awfully shaky. Now, here, I'll hold the oar up high and give you...
Hold it, Boynton! There'll be no American tragedy in this boat.
Mr. Conklin, then it was you under the tarpaulin.
See? I told you it felt like a mass of whale blubber. Mr. Conklin, what are you doing in this boat?
What am I doing? Miss Brooks, wherever a human life is in peril, there you will find Osgood Conklin. Confess, Boynton, what are you doing out here on the lake with Miss Brooks and that oar?
We're rowing around studying the nocturnal habits of the speckled bullfrog.
Good boy. I knew if I put it to you that way, you'd confess. You were going to bash her head in, drown her, then swim to shore and plead that you're rowing around studying the habits of the speckled bullfrog.
Scared to duck back under the tarpaulin again? Mr. Conklin, I know it's bad news for you, but let's face it. Mr. Boynton was not trying to drown me.
Not trying to drown you? But he can't do this to me. I mean, I worked so hard to be well, just to play it safe, Boynton, I'll take that oar.
But, sir, this is preposterous.
Nothing will happen in this boat as long as Osgood Conklin is here.
That's just the trouble.
Boynton, hand me that oar.
Oh, but, sir...
Very well, if you won't give it to me, I'll have to wrest it from you. Release that oar, Boynton. Give it.
Oh, good gosh. There goes our only oar. Oh, we'll never find it in the dark.
Our only oar?
Yes, and heaven knows where we are on this lake. We've been drifting for an hour. We're probably miles from land by now. How are we going to get back without an oar?
Sir, frankly, I'm worried, too. There's no one else on this lake. Who knows how long we'll be out here?
And why are we all so nervous? True, this is a period of crisis, but luckily you have Osgood Conklin aboard. I shall be your captain.
We're dead. What Mr. Boynton said is right, sir. It might be days before we're rescued.
There's nothing to eat in the boat.
With a little ingenuity, Boynton, we'll find something to eat.
Don't look at me, sir. I'm indigestible.
But first, I'll run this ship the way it should be run. Mr. Boynton, you will sit fore and keep a sharp lookout for smoke on the horizon. Miss Brooks, you may sit aft and troll for small fish with a bobby pin tied on a shoelace. And I shall sit here and steer the boat manually using that good old North Star as my guide.
But, sir, that's the moon you're pointing at.
And I thought it seemed a rather odd shape for a star. Well, let's try to get organized, shall we? Clear thinking is the ticket. Lacking an oar, we shall need to improvise a sail immediately. I'll need some large white garment. Miss Brooks?
You won't get a stitch from me.
Well, then, Boynton, I suggest we use your shirt as a sail.
Second the motion. And let's throw in his undershirt, too, sir. His shirt ought to do nicely.
Oh, sir, can't we wait until morning for all this?
You'll obey orders, Boynton, while I am captain of this ship.
Irons below, sir.
We can dispense with your levity, Miss Brooks. And now, before anything else, as a source of hope and inspiration, let us all bow our heads and prayerfully intone the first verse of my poem, Keep Your Head, by Osgood Conklin.
Why not let me try to swim to shore for help, sir?
But, Miss Brooks, you can't swim.
Well, there's no time like the present to learn. Say, am I imagining things, or is this boat sinking?
Sinking? Holy cow, you're right. Well, there's a leak.
A leak? Where? Good grief! Water's coming in. There is a leak. The boat's sinking. I can't swim.
I don't think this boat can last 5 minutes the way the water's coming in. Maybe much less.
Well, keep your head, Boynton. Don't get panicky. Don't get panicky, boy. You'll need all your strength. All of it, every ounce of it, to tow me ashore.
Tow you ashore? But what about me, sir? I can't swim either. And you know the tradition of the sea. The captain goes down with his ship.
Not in this ship. Grab my hair, Boynton. Don't just sit there. Keep a clear head, boy, clear. Here, grab my arm. Which arm do you want? Take your choice. Either. Oh, help me, Boynton. Help me.
Steady, sir. Let's not lose our heads.
Just think of your poem, sir. When others about you show panic and fear.
Oh, stop that idiotic balderdash! Now help me, Boynton. I have a wife and family. Miss Brooks has no wife. Nothing. Oh, save me, Boynton. Save me. Who's that? Martha! Good heavens, I see the mother of my child. My life must be flashing before my eyes.
Osgood, what on earth are you babbling about?
Martha, is that really you? How did you get out here? Are you treading water?
What for? The lake is only 3 feet deep here. You're shouting, so I put on your hip boots and waded out.
It's only 3 feet deep here.
Now will you let the women and children go first?
Mrs. Conklin, just where are we now?
Oh, the cabin is just around the bend, Mr. Boynton. Now, Osgood, will you kindly explain just why my big hero suddenly went to pieces?
Went to pieces? I? Why, Martha, what a fantastic idea. Oh, I will admit I was a little upset, but it was more for the safety of Mr. Boynton and Miss Brooks than myself. My first concern was for their safety. Isn't that so, Miss Brooks?
Well, what do you say, Miss Brooks?
The next time you run Mr. Conklin's bath, be sure you throw in a life preserver.
Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. Larry Burns, written by Arthur Oldsberg and Lou Derman with the music of Lud Gluskin. Mr. Conklin was played by Gail Gordon.
This is the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
This is the American Forces Network, Europe.
Now, Anacin, the tablet thousands of physicians and dentists recommend for fast relief of pain of headache, neuritis, neuralgia, and heat, the liniment that's strong yet does not burn, present Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. It's time once again for another comedy episode of Our Miss Brooks, transcribed. But first, may I make a suggestion that you will probably thank me for someday? It's simply this. The next time you suffer from headache, neuritis, or neuralgia pain, try Anacin. The reason we suggest this is because we feel sure you will be surprised at how incredibly fast Anacin gives you relief. Thousands of people who have tried Anacin say its action is truly astonishing. Anacin is like a doctor's prescription. That is, Anacin contains not just one, but a combination of medically proven active ingredients in easy-to-take tablet form. Thus, in taking Anacin, you are following sound principles. The next time you suffer pain from headache, neuritis, or neuralgia, don't wait for relief. Try Anacin. On this guarantee, if the first few Anacin tablets do not give you all the relief you want as fast as you want it, return the unused portion and your money will be refunded. You can get Anacin at any drug counter in handy boxes of 12 and 30 tablets and economical family-size bottles of 50 and 100. I'll spell the name for you, Anacin. Well, when a woman feels about a man the way our Miss Brooks, who teaches English at Madison High, feels about Philip Boynton, the biology instructor, she's usually pretty patient with him. But after going together for 6 years, she's beginning to feel that she's given him enough rope.
I'm also beginning to feel like getting some of the rope back so I can hang myself. All in all, I accomplished some pretty high-class brooding during the week. But oddly enough, it was my landlady's cat who finally took my mind off my personal problems. She was missing at dinner Wednesday night, and when she didn't show up Thursday morning at breakfast, I mentioned my concern to my landlady.
Really, Connie, there's nothing to worry about. Minerva stayed away many times.
But Mrs. Davis, she wasn't here for dinner last night.
Now you know Minerva. She'll be back. Anyway, dear, it isn't like you to worry about things like that. There's something else behind your nervousness, isn't there, Connie?
Something else?
Yes. You've been brooding all week long. Has Mr. Boynton been bothering you?
I should live so long. That is, well, if you want to look at it that way, my brooding has something to do with Mr. Boynton. In fact, it has everything to do with Mr. Boynton.
I thought that was it.
Here it is near the end of another school year, and his attitude toward me still hasn't changed.
Well, Connie, you listen to me. For once, I'm going to talk to you like a Dutch uncle. For 6 years now, I've watched how you handle Mr. Boynton. And as far as I can see, there's only one way you'll ever become Mrs. Boynton.
I know. Bump off his mother and marry his father.
No, you've got to change completely.
Change?
Exactly. And all the time you've known Mr. Boynton, you've been completely independent. You've gone Dutch on dates, loaned him money. Why, you were as self-reliant as he was. And what's the result? You're a pal to him, a buddy, but never a woman.
You mean he thinks of me as a playmate instead of a mate?
Precisely. Now, there are several things you can do to make him think of you as a woman.
Wouldn't it save time if I just showed him my birth certificate?
I'm not kidding, Connie. A man likes to feel he's needed by a woman, that he's being depended upon. He enjoys being the big protector.
You may have something there, Mrs. Davis. What do you suggest I do?
Well, have you ever cried on his shoulder?
Cried?
I mean, really turned on both faucets?
Well, no, I never...
That's the greatest gimmick we women have. A man can't stand to see a woman cry. His defenses go down, and all his protective instincts come to the fore. Most men will do anything to stop a woman from crying.
But, Mrs. Davis, I can't turn on my tear ducts like that.
You could if you had a little help.
Help?
Connie, I have an idea. I'm going to cut up some raw onions and put them in your handbag.
Raw onions? Oh, Mrs. Davis, I wouldn't... That must be Walter Denton to drive me to school. Be out in a minute, Walter.
Connie, if you want to see how effective tears can be, this is the best possible way.
But, Mrs. Davis...
For once in his life, you've got to make Mr. Boynton aware of your presence.
If I open that handbag, the whole school will be aware of my presence. Come to think of it, though, it would be very interesting to see how Mr. Boynton reacts to tears.
You'll be amazed, Connie. Now, I'll just take your handbag into the kitchen and be back in a minute. Where is it, dear?
It's over on the sideboard. Oh, and Mrs. Davis, before I forget, please call me later in the day and let me know if Minerva shows up.
All right, dear. My brother Victor promised to help me look for her today. I'm sure she'll turn up all right. Now then, is there anything else?
Yes, if you do find Minerva, don't discuss what we're having for dinner in front of her. She might not show up for another 6 days. Walter, be careful. Please don't drive so fast. Walter, watch out! Oh, now, for goodness sake, slow down. You just missed 2 fire hydrants by inches.
I guess I'm out of practice. The reason I'm hurrying is because I was over at the Conklins last night, and old Marblehead, Mr. Conklin, said he wanted to see you first thing today.
Oh, he did? Well, then, by all means, drive the way you were before.
Well, you mean you want to get there faster?
No, but that way we have a 50-50 chance of not getting there at all.
No, we'll make it all right. Oh, Miss Brooks, pardon me for mentioning it, but there's a slight smudge on your nose.
A smudge?
Yeah, I can't understand where it came from.
Me either. After all, this car is only open on 5 sides. Let's see, I've got a handkerchief right here in my handbag. I did have one in here. Where did I put it?
Well, Miss Brooks. Miss Brooks, what is it?
What's what?
You're crying. I've never seen you cry before. What is it, Miss Brooks? What happened?
Nothing, Walter. Nothing at all.
Well, then why are you crying? Oh, Miss Brooks, please don't. I can't stand to see one cry. And particularly a woman I'm as fond of as I am of you.
Oh, it's all right, Walter. Believe me, I'm all right.
No, you can't fool me, Miss Brooks. I know you too well. Something terrible must have happened for you to keep crying this way.
Oh, it's not so terrible. I just can't get this bag closed. I mean, I'll be all right in a minute.
Oh, please, let me help you, please. Oh, something happens to me when I see a woman crying. Honestly, right now I've got butterflies in my stomach. What can I do?
Get Technicolor x-rays.
I'll do anything. If you'll only just stop crying.
Are you kidding? If I can get results like this, I'll make Niagara Falls look like a damp blotter.
Who is it and what do you want?
Miss Brooks, and not a thing. Bye.
Come in, Miss Brooks.
Did you want to see me, Mr. Conklin?
I asked to see you, Miss Brooks. Believe me, there's a difference. Sit down, please, and I'll come straight to the point.
Yes, sir.
Miss Brooks, I have a little problem to pose to you.
A problem, Mr. Conklin?
Something that I'd like your advice on. You see, the PTA has asked me to make a speech tomorrow night, and speeches take time and preparation. Preparation that can't be accomplished during school hours. Therefore, an evening must be devoted to it. Follow me so far, Miss Brooks?
Like a reluctant beagle. Yes, sir, I do.
Well, since the speech must be prepared this evening, and since there's no one else to turn to, if you were me, what would you do?
I'd sit down and write the speech myself.
I accept your kind offer. Be over at my house at 9 sharp.
But, sir, I meant that you should write it. I have an appointment with Mr. Boynton for tonight.
Oh, you have? Well, naturally, you can't break a date at the last minute.
Oh, I'm glad you see it that way, Mr. Conklin.
Indeed I do, Miss Brooks. I wouldn't dream of separating you two tonight for the world.
That's very considerate, sir.
So while you are working on my speech to the PTA, Mr. Boynton can sit in the same room preparing my report to the Board of Education.
But, Mr. Conklin...
I'll see you at 9 tonight. Oh, and before you face your pupils, Miss Brooks, it might be advisable to remove that smudge from the side of your nose.
Smudge? Oh, that's right. I never did get that thing off. Is it very noticeable, sir?
Not very. It just looks as if your hairnet slipped down. Can I lend you something to take it off with?
Oh, no, thanks. I have a handkerchief right here in my bag. At least I thought I had one in here. Now, where is that handkerchief?
Miss Brooks. Miss Brooks, what is it?
What's what?
Why, you're crying. I've never seen you cry before. There, Miss Brooks. There.
Where? Oh, it's nothing, Mr. Conklin. Nothing at all.
Then why are you crying?
No, I'm not crying.
Then dry your eyes at once, do you hear? Brooks, forget about tonight. I'll never ask you to work at my house again. I'll never ask you to do anything again. Never. Anything, I promise.
Oh, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Please stop crying. Something happens to me when I see a woman cry. I get butterflies in my stomach.
Oh, they get around, don't they?
I'll do anything you ask, only please stop crying.
Oh, yes, sir. There. God stopped.
Oh, thank goodness. Are you all right now? Will you be able to take your first class, Miss Brooks?
Yes, sir. But first I have to make a very grateful phone call.
A grateful phone call to whom?
Well, let's just call her a gal who really knows her onions.
Friends, when agonizing pain of rheumatism, muscle strain, or backache makes you miserable and every move is a torment, that's the time to reach for Heat. H-E-E-T. Heat. The liniment that's strong, yet does not burn. The moment you apply it, you can feel Heat's soothing warmth working to relieve your painful miseries. That's because Heat penetrates deep, brings immediate relief to sore, aching muscles. Wherever you ache, just brush on Heat. Heat penetrates deep, keeps working for hours to bring wonderful, soothing comfort to the painful, aching area. Your pain seems to disappear. Heat isn't oily, sticky, or messy. You just brush on Heat with a handy applicator that comes with each bottle, and it dries in seconds. So remember, when pain of rheumatism, muscle strain, or backache makes you miserable, Heat's penetrating warmth gives you fast, long-lasting relief. Get Heat. H-E-E-T. Heat, the liniment that penetrates deep to bring immediate relief. Well, so far, Mrs. Davis' idea that tears could soften up any man for Miss Brooks has worked beautifully, but with the wrong men. Now, as Miss Brooks waits at a table in the school cafeteria for the big experiment, Mr. Boynton, her prize guinea pig, is deep in conversation with Walter Denton at the entrance to the cafeteria.
So I thought you might know why Miss Brooks did all that crying this morning, Mr. Boynton.
I haven't the slightest idea, Walter. What's more, I simply can't imagine Miss Brooks crying.
No, I couldn't either until this morning.
Well, I still can't believe it of her. I thought only women cried. That is, weaker women.
Yeah, me too. Somehow I've always thought of Miss Brooks as a kind of Rock of Gibraltar.
Well, that's funny. I've always pictured her as sort of an indestructible battleship. But I suppose each of us has his own romantic impression of the same woman.
Well, whatever's causing it must be pretty awful. But whatever it is, I'm sure you could take her mind off her troubles, Mr. Boynton.
Well, I'm willing to try, Walter. I'm going to meet her for lunch now, and got a little idea that I hope will make her forget her own worries, whatever they are.
Oh, that's swell. Good luck, Mr. Boynton.
Oh, there we are.
There who are? Oh, we. Yes, here I are. Am. Please sit down, Mr. Boynton.
Oh, thanks. Where's your lunch, Miss Brooks?
Oh, I thought maybe you'd go and get both our lunches. Here, I'll just open my bag and give you the money.
Miss Brooks, take your hand away from your pocketbook this minute. Since when have I let you pay for your lunch?
Since when haven't you?
Well, anyway, I'm paying for lunch today.
It's a fine time to start. Well, you don't mind if I open my bag to powder my nose, do you?
Oh, not at all, Miss Brooks. I'll wait right here till you get back.
I should have left that smudge on my face while I was ahead. You see, Mr. Boynton, I haven't been quite myself today.
Yes, so I heard, Miss Brooks. I also heard that you've been crying. Oh, I could hardly believe it. Must be something terribly serious.
Oh, it is. It is.
Then I suppose my troubles would seem minor by comparison.
Your troubles? Has something happened to you, too?
Oh, it's hardly worth mentioning, Miss Brooks. My father had a little fire in his place of business last week.
Oh, really? Any serious damage?
Oh, not what any of us Boyntons would call serious. It was quite a fire, though.
Where is your father's place of business, Mr. Boynton?
He operates a small factory upstate.
Oh, what does he manufacture?
Paper boxes and Excelsior, mostly.
The whole shebang burned to the ground.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Was he insured?
Funny thing about that, his policy lapsed the day before the fire.
Pretty careless planning. What is he going to do?
Oh, he'll just borrow some money and build another plant, I guess. My brother will be able to help out as soon as his broken leg heals.
Your brother has a broken leg?
He broke it trying to rescue my sister. Got to her just in time.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yes, she should be coming out of shock any day now.
Shock? Oh, Mr. Boynton, you have had a rough time. I'm surprised you never mentioned any of this before.
Oh, I was going to, but then I figured, why should I bore you with a lot of family trivia? It's all part of living, I always say.
Well, you've certainly shown a lot of courage bearing up the way you have, Mr. Boynton.
Oh, there's nothing, really. Oh, hello, Harriet.
Hi, Mr. Boynton.
Hello, Harriet.
Oh, hello, Miss Brooks. Are you feeling better?
Than whom? I feel quite well, thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. You looked pretty grim in class before. Oh, Daddy wants to see Mr. Boynton right away. He says he should get down to his office on the double.
On the double?
Mm-hmm, that's right. And you know Daddy when he says get there on the double.
When Daddy says get there on the double, you'd better get there on the triple.
So, Mr. Boynton, you have no idea why Miss Brooks has been crying all day.
Not the faintest, Mr. Conklin.
I wouldn't have imagined it possible if I hadn't seen her do it right here in my office this morning.
It's very unlike her, sir.
Indeed it is. I still have difficulty believing it of Miss Brooks. I've always thought only people cried. That is, weaker women.
Yes, exactly. I've always thought of Miss Brooks as an indestructible battleship.
Have you really? Isn't that funny? I've always pictured her as a heavily armored tank. But this morning, when she started to blink her gun slits, to blink her eyes, and they filled with tears, I was completely disillusioned.
Well, it must be something pretty serious.
Hello, Osgood Conklin speaking. Who? Oh, yes, I'll give Miss Brooks a message. What? Oh, that's terrible, terrible. Oh, yes, I'll break it to her as gently as I can. Goodbye. Well, that call explains everything.
Who was it, sir?
Mrs. Davis's brother. He said to just tell Miss Brooks that the poor dear is still missing.
Missing? Why, no wonder Miss Brooks was depressed. Mrs. Davis has been a second mother to her. And she's gone.
Well, it was inevitable that she'd wander off, poor thing.
Inevitable?
From the moment I met her, I always said that Mrs. Davis was a natural for amnesia.
Our Miss Brooks will return in a moment. Way back in 1512, an explorer named Ponce de Leon discovered the peninsula we now call Florida. Months and maybe years later, news of his discovery filtered back to the old country, full of distortions, legends, and wild reports. Communications was a pretty hit-and-miss affair in Ponce's day. In our 20th century, however, communications have reached the complexity and precision of a science and the swiftness of magic. When you listen to CBS Radio, your living room is on the news fronts of the world. Events reach you almost as they happen, and they're reported accurately, completely, and without bias. The roster of CBS newsmen includes such names as Edward R. Murrow, Lowell Thomas, Larry LeSueur, Eric Severide, Howard K. Smith, Robert Trout, and many others, all well qualified by years of experience at home and abroad to bring you the kind of news you want to hear. Straight, accurate, and up to the minute. CBS Radio News. Listen to it every day and keep well informed.
Well, so far today, a few tears plus a missing cat have resulted in a near cause celeb for our Miss Brooks. After taking a brief phone message for her, Mr. Conklin and Mr. Boynton have convinced themselves that the reason she has been in tears almost all day is that her landlady is missing. However, as Miss Brooks answers a phone call at home that evening, she is unaware of their deductions.
Hello? Hello, Connie. I'm sorry I couldn't be home for dinner. Did you fix yourself something nice?
Yes, Mrs. Davis, I fixed myself real nice. I finished the Hungarian goulash. Did you find Minerva yet?
Not yet, dear, but I'm certain she'll turn up. If not tonight, then certainly in time for breakfast tomorrow.
She might at that, now that the goulash is gone.
By the way, dear, did you get the message my brother Victor left at school for you?
Yes, Mr. Conklin gave it to me. And oddly enough, he seemed even more disturbed about Minerva's disappearance than I am.
Oh, isn't that nice? Well, don't worry, Connie. I'll be home in a little while.
Don't hurry, Mrs. Davis. Mr. Boynton ought to be here any time now, and I'm going to try your crying routine on him. It worked beautifully with the others.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned it, Connie. If you can't get to your handbag, just stick your head in the fruit bowl on the end table. You'll get the same results.
The fruit bowl? But there are only apples in that.
They're just the camouflage on top. Underneath, it's loaded with onions.
Mrs. Davis, you think of everything. Oh, there's the doorbell. That's probably Mr. Boynton. I'd better hang up.
All right, dear. Good luck.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis. Goodbye.
Good evening, Miss Brooks.
Good evening, Mr. Boynton. Come in.
Thank you. Miss Brooks, I heard the sad news today from Mr. Conklin, and I want you to know you have my deepest sympathy.
Huh?
It must be a great strain to have such a close companion missing.
Companion? Oh, her. Yes, I do miss her.
It's probably in the evening like this when you miss her most.
You're right, Mr. Boynton. Only the night before last, I sat in this chair reading and stroking her back for hours.
You did?
Oh, you should have heard her purr. She always responded to affection.
She was the affectionate type, all right.
She certainly was. You don't know how many times a night she used to jump up on my lap and beg to be scratched.
I beg your pardon?
She used to like me to tweak her whiskers, too.
Well, really, Miss Brooks, I know you've got a keen sense of humor, but this seems hardly the time.
Why not? Oh, I'm sure we'll find her.
Well, I hope so.
Oh, we always have in the past. Either lying asleep in some alley or out yowling on some fence.
What? Well, I had no idea Mrs. Davis indulged.
Mrs. Davis? I was talking about our cat, Minerva.
But I thought Mrs. Davis was missing and that you were all alone.
Alone? Oh, I am. She is. Mrs. Davis and her cat Minerva are missing together. They're inseparable, you know. Never do anything without the other. Oh, it's a tragedy, Mr. Boynton. A great tragedy.
Oh, now, take it easy, Miss Brooks. Here, sit down on this chair.
Let's take the couch. To think that now I'm all alone. All alone in the world. Hand me my bag, Mr. Boynton.
Miss Brooks, you're not going to cry.
Just hand me my bag, please. Thanks. Now, where is that handkerchief of mine? Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Please, Miss Brooks, please don't cry.
Oh, I'll be all right, Mr. Boynton. It's just that after all these years of wonderful companionship...
Miss Brooks, please stop crying. I can't stand it.
You can't?
Don't, Miss Brooks. Please don't.
I'm going to be all alone, Mr. Boynton. All alone.
No, you won't, Miss Brooks. You'll always have me.
You? Oh, Mr. Boynton.
If Mrs. Davis doesn't return, I'll look after you.
Oh.
I've been thinking, Miss Brooks, why can't you and I... Well, why can't we...
That's what I'd like to know. Go on, Mr. Boynton. Mr. Boynton? Yes? Yes, Mr. Boynton? Yes?
The doorbell rang, Miss Brooks.
I know. It always does when I'm dreaming. Well, I'd better answer it, I guess. Mrs. Davis, what are you doing here?
Oh, don't you remember? I live here. I'm sorry I had to ring, Connie, but I forgot my key.
Oh, yes, your key.
You seem nervous about something, dear. Did I get back too soon?
Just about a week too soon.
What are you talking about, dear? I purposely hurried home to show you who I found.
Minerva.
I knew how concerned you were about her, but now she's found and all your worries are over.
Except one.
What's that?
How can I lose her again? Mrs. Davis, you know that phone message your brother gave Mr. Conklin?
Yes.
Well, he misunderstood it, and now everyone thinks you're the one who's missing.
Me?
I told Mr. Boynton you and Minerva were both missing, and he was so touched he was about to propose.
He must have been touched. That is,
Who is it, Miss Brooks?
It's just a policeman reporting on Mrs. Davis, Mr. Boynton.
Policeman?
You got nothing to worry about, Miss Brooks. We got the best men on the force looking for her.
Oh, thanks, Mrs. Davis. Now, if you will only stay out of sight for a little while, I'll go back into Mr. Boynton and help him finish what he started.
Certainly, dear. I'll take Minerva and get into this hall closet.
Oh, you're a doll, Mrs. Davis.
Miss Brooks, what was that?
What was what? I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear that either.
It seemed to be coming from the hall closet. I'm going to investigate.
Oh, Mr. Boynton, wait!
Mrs. Davis, what are you doing in there?
Mrs. Davis? There's no one by that name in here.
Minerva!
There's no one by that name in there either.
It's no use, Connie. I guess the jig is up.
Miss Brooks, I think you owe me an explanation. You told me that... Miss Brooks, where are you going?
I'm not sure yet. Just forward all my mail to the Missing Persons Bureau.
Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden, transcribed, was produced and directed by Larry Burns, written by Arthur Olsberg and Al Lewis, with the music of Lud Gluskin. Mr. Conklin was played by Gail Gordon. Others in tonight's cast were Jane Morgan, Dick Crenna, Bob Rockwell, Gloria McMillan, and Billy Gould.
In the annual awards poll conducted by TV Radio Mirror magazine, for the third time, American radio listeners have chosen Eve Arden as their favorite comedienne. We hope all of the listeners will want to read about Eve and the awards in the May issue, now on the newsstands.
Be sure to be with us next week for another comedy episode of Our Miss Brooks,